Hello, my name's Tim. Welcome to Tim Burbage Reads. And today I'm going to be talking to you about a reading wrap up of my goals so far this year, my reading goals. So this year I set myself a set of reading goals, and instead of splitting it up into quarters, I split it up into thirds because actually building it around the Easter break, the summer break, and then Christmas is kind of nice natural milestones in the year. So we've had Easter, we've had January, February, March, April. We're now in May, so I'm going to do a wrap up of January to April and my goals. So first of all, in the first third of the year, I read 32 books, which is a lot. It is a lot. So of those 32, 12 of them were 5-star reads, which is really strong. If you kind of go by genre, I had 3 5-star reads in the fantasy genre, but they were all rereads for me. That was A Hero Born by Jin Yong. That was The Hobbit and the Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. The Hobbit and Fellowship I did on audio, and Jin Yong I did with my eyes. There was also a 5-star comic in there, which is Transformers #1, where I had the special edition cover with the Battersea Power Station and Optimus Prime kind of over the top of it. I would love to read more of that comic. There were 2 5-star reads that I read to the kids, one of which is Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, which my kids absolutely loved, and then the other one is The Bad Guys 5 and 6, which I read to my son, and it's just such fun. There were 2 kids' books that I read just for me. One of them is The Creakers by Tom Fletcher, which my wife read to my daughter at the end of last year, and my son listened to the audiobook. We went to see the show, and we've had the soundtrack on basically the whole year. And I read it myself right at the start of January and absolutely loved it. The other is The Storm and the Seahawk by Kieran Millward Hargrave. This is definitely a middle grade, kind of maybe a little bit older, but was a fantastic book 2 in a trilogy. There was one classic that was a 5-star read, which was The Abysmal Brute by Jack London, which was a story about pugilism and boxing. Had one non-fiction book that was 5 stars, which was Poster Art of the Disney Parks, where I discovered my unsung hero of Disney posters, Bjorn Arneson. And there were 2 kind of general fiction books that I gave 5 stars to. One of which was Airframe by Michael Crichton, and the second of which was Metronome by Tom Watson. So it's been a very, very good reading year for me. I've enjoyed it. My least favourite book of the year, it is The Long War by Terry Pratchett and Stephen Baxter. Book 2 in the Long Earth series, and I'm done with that series unless I find very easy audiobooks that maybe I can do in my spare time, but I'm not looking to target that series anymore. The first book I thought was okay, really interesting ideas, and the second book was worse. So if I look at my most read genres, fantasy is actually in 3rd place with 5 reads: A Tale of Magic, A Hero Born, The Hobbit, The Fellowship, and Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldree. So I did want to kind of read less fantasy this year, and that is certainly the case. With 3 rereads in that 5, I've only read 2 new fantasy books. 5 next was also general fiction. So Missing in Flight, Scarlet Witch, Airframe, Metronome, and Congo by Michael Crichton. And then my most read genre, which isn't a surprise, is books read that I read to my kids. So that's 9 books. There's Crestor the Crushing Terror, which is a Beast Quest book. The Wild Robot. We read a Little People, Big Dreams of Stan Lee. We read Investigators, which was great. How to Train Your Dragon. Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. City of Dragons. And then Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets and The Bad Guys. Overall, I set myself 8 goals where I wanted to read 1 book from that category every third of the year. So the first was Jack London. So I read 1 Jack London book, which was The Abysmal Brute, which I absolutely loved. And I'm missing it. It was funny. Last year I read 12 Jack London books, 1 book every month, and I was like, I'm going to take a break. And now I'm getting a bit of a hankering for it. I loved The Abysmal Brute. I really enjoyed it. So that's something that I'm looking to potentially try and read more of in this third of the year. Next was a classic. So I read one classic. I read Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, which was very good. Found the ending, the last third, not as interesting. I listened to it on audio. Actually, a lot of the classics you can get on audio very easily, so I might do that a bit more. One classic, I'm fine with that. I'm not kind of desperate for more, and Jack London also kind of scratches that classic itch a little bit as well. Fantasy, yes, as I said before, I read 5 fantasy books, 3 were rereads, and I'm fine with the amount of fantasy I'm reading. I'm reading a fantasy book right now. I'm happy with that. I'm not feeling burnt out by fantasy at all. The next was a book from the library. So this has always been a bit of a challenge because we do go to the library fairly often, but the fantasy and science fiction sections at the library are very small in my local library. And in terms of general fiction, it's just general. There's general fiction, A to Z, crime, and then fantasy. And I don't have the time to go through the whole library and find something, because usually we're there, or not usually, we're always there with the kids, and we spend most of the time in the kids section. So I did find a book, which was The Long War by Terry Pratchett and Stephen Baxter, which I did not enjoy. I blew up my TBR to get this book because I found it at the library, actually a different library where I was doing some arts and crafts with the kids, and I was like, cool, I've been interested in this, so I got it, and I really didn't enjoy it, and it kind of put me into a bit of a mini reading slump. So I thought this would be the hardest, and it's proving that, but I have read one book in the first third of the year, and I'm looking to read at least one more. So self-pub, I've read 3 self-pub this year. I've read Heretic, I've read Happy Bunny and Other Mischiefs, and I've read Small Town Problems, which is really good. Heretic, I thought was very lightweight. It kind of did what it wanted to do pretty well, but I wanted more from it. And it had that classic, like, oh, you need to find out what happens next time, which is fine, but it didn't feel like a full story to me. Happy Bunny and Other Mischiefs was a series of short stories, which were weird, bizarre, strange, and scary. And I enjoyed some of them to varying levels. Some of them I really didn't enjoy, but I'm not really a horror reader, and I could tell that the quality of writing was very strong throughout. And the third was Small Town Problems, which is a viewer sent to me. So if you are watching this video, you have written and published your own book, send it to me and I will read it and I will do a review for it. It may not be quick, because if you send me kind of the Epic of Gilgamesh, some great tome, it might take me a while to get to it, but I will definitely do it, because it's very hard to write a book, and it's very hard to publish a book, and it's very hard to publicize a book. So anything I could do to help. I've got a couple of self-pubs on my Kindle, so I have enough for the rest of the year, but I'm certainly looking for more. Next was Michael Crichton. So I've read 2 Michael Crichton books this third of the year. I read Airframe and Congo. Airframe I absolutely loved. Congo I liked. I thought it was kind of trying to do a little bit too much. But I've got Timeline, I've got Prey, I've got State of Fear to read. So I've got enough Michael Crichton to kind of fill me out for the rest of the year, and I'm happy with that. Next was non-fiction. I only got to one non-fiction book in this third, which was Postgraphs of the Disney Parks, which is kind of a big coffee table book. It's not kind of proper non-fiction, but I did really enjoy that. I've got Divided by Tim Marshall, and then I'm running quite low on non-fiction. I think I do have Memoir by Anthony Kiedis from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. So I've got enough for the year, but I haven't got a ton. And then one challenge, which I kind of added on at the end, which I thought this is going to be easy, was read a book by Rick Riordan every third of the year. And I was already started reading, I was due to start reading The Trials of Apollo, Book 2, the I can't remember what it's called, The Dark Prophecy, something about prophecy. They're all about prophecies. And I found it really hard. I found it a real slog. I did not enjoy it. And then we started reading Percy Jackson to my kids, and I was like, oh, this is nice, because I was actually kind of reading both of them at the same time, and it highlighted to me how much more interesting Percy Jackson was. Percy Jackson finds out he's the son of Poseidon, and he meets a centaur, and he meets a chimera, and he goes to the underworld, and he meets Cerberus and Hades and Ares. And then I'm reading this Trials of Apollo book 2, and I'm meeting the Roman god of traps. And I'm fighting a monster, which I don't even understand really what it is, because we're at like D list now, because he's gone through all the good ones. And I've hit 1 for this year in Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. I honestly don't know if I'm going to be able to finish Trials of Apollo in the next 3 months, 3-4 months, because I've put it down like 3-4 times. So that's going to be a challenge. This was a goal that I didn't start out with, but in January I noticed I think I was only reading 1 book written by a woman, and I wanted to read more books by women. I do read a lot of classics and fantasy stories, which are predominantly written by old white men, especially classic fantasy. So I want to make sure that I'm reading more books by women and kind of branch out. So if it's kind of a 50-50, I try and choose the book written by a woman, kind of prioritize that this month, every month. And so far, seeming as I think I noticed it in January or February, I've read 10 books written by women this year, out of 31 for this part of the year, which is, I think, is pretty good. It could obviously definitely better. 50-50 is definitely the goal here. And yeah, so I've read 8 books that were written just by a woman, and then 2 books that were kind of co-written. So one of which is Poster Art for the Disney Parks, and the other one was City of Dragons, where the illustrator was a woman, and I'm counting that. So, yeah, so those are my goals. Overall, I'm very happy with my reading this year. I have definitely slowed down in April and in May due to work and life commitments. So it's about planning my reading in a way to make sure I'm hitting my goals. I'm not kind of putting stress on myself about reading, which is meant to be fun. And one other thing as well is that I am doing a Disney challenge where I'm highlighting a different book related on Disney writing prompt every month, and I've nailed all those so far. So I'm really, really happy with that. Anyway, let me know how you're doing with your reading goals. Have you got a total number of books in mind, or are you doing it kind of by genre, or how are you doing it? And how are you splitting up your reading goals? Let me know in the comments below. Please give this video a like. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next one. Now, get out of my house!